May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
It really is all gift, isn't it? I just keep thinking that throughout this week, and as I've been reflecting upon the gospel that we just heard. It really is all gift. We have been given so much more than we have asked for. We have been given so much more than we even have imagined, than we even have dared to imagine. We have been given so much more than we deserve, and everything we have and everything we are is of God and from God. And this being given more than we have asked or imagined or have deserved or have even dreamed, this is grace. This is the foundation on which we stand. God's grace is made perfect in and through our weakness. So whenever we are weak, whenever we are tired, whenever we are unsure, whenever we are confused, whenever we are disheartened, whenever we are grieving, it is grace through which we live. And we need not then lose heart. I think this is the heart of the gospel that we've just heard. Two different approaches to grace. The first, the Pharisee, the religious leader of a relatively legalistic and prudent and detail-oriented type. A type A, perhaps. God bless all of you type A's. And so the Pharisee of whom Jesus is speaking knows and acknowledges that all that he has been given is from God. He acknowledges that all he has been given is from God. But does he acknowledge the grace? Does he know that he stands upon grace alone? I'm not sure. Because he goes on to talk about how good he is at what he's been given. A Pharisee in his time would have been expected to fast on the holidays at certain prescribed times of year. Our Pharisee fasts every week. No, not once a week. Thank you for asking. Twice a week. Our Pharisee gives 1/10 of all of his income. These practices, giving, tithing, and fasting, are wonderful in themselves, and the purpose of both is to draw us closer to God and specifically closer to grace. Specifically to the recognition of the reality that all that we have is beyond what we've asked for or imagined or have deserved. And that is grace. If we're not sure about the Pharisee, Jesus goes on to talk then about the tax collector. Now here too there is complexity, just as with the Pharisee, who gives and tithes and fasts, all of which are good things, but perhaps misses their specific purpose. The tax collector is a man of complexity as well. For we as humans, if we are to have taxes, must have someone to collect them. It is a job, right? At that time, and what we might lose a little bit in the translation of the story down the generations, is that at that time, a tax collector was something of a free agent. There was not much accountability, to be precise, of how he went about collecting the taxes. He could overcharge. He could skim off the top really as much as he liked, and nobody would tell him otherwise. So you can see then why tax collectors of the time had a reputation of taking home a little extra beyond what they had asked for. And so somebody hearing this story and this juxtaposition of the two men praying there in the temple would have immediately understood that the tax collector probably came to the temple to pray with something of a heavy and complicated heart, knowing that his job was that which he had to do for his livelihood, but perhaps not sure if he was going about it in the most genuine and moral way. It would seem to me that both men, though they might be depicted as opposites, both men are complex and come to the temple with a lot to pray about. Just as we come here together with a lot to pray about. I think the purpose of the story, however, is to note, where is the grace? Is grace that which has us stand apart from the others and be thankful that we're not like all those other people? Is grace that which has us stand on our own righteousness? I think these are the questions that Jesus is asking in this parable. Or is grace that which draws us together? That which draws us together to pray? That which acknowledges that of the things that we have done and left undone, and that we are not fully ourselves, that we are not in full relationship with God, without coming together to pray and acknowledging that all we have is from God, utterly undeserved and even unimagined. It's clear to me, it really is all about grace. And it's clear to me that I must pursue and explore that every day. Just as God's mercies are new every morning, as the psalmist says, so are my doubts and my questions and my acknowledgments of complexity and the turmoil in which we live as humanity. So is my need to explore grace daily. I have been playing with ways to say this, and I'm not scripted. I'm just going to speak as plainly now as I would on any other day. That I know so much of grace because of you. I know so much more of grace because of how you have allowed me to listen with you and walk with you and talk with you and explore with you. I am keenly aware every day of how, as our confession says, we have things that we do, we have things that we don't get to. We have things where we hit the mark, and we have things where we miss the mark. And it's all of one piece, because we are together. We come together to pray, and because we stand on nothing else but grace. Every day I wake up and think that there must be something more complicated to it. That perhaps grace isn't real, and perhaps we live in a world of logic where the things that I do and don't do equal a certain future for myself. And every day, through you especially, and our ministry together, I am astonished that what we stand on, what we're rooted in, what we live in, is nothing but grace. And the grace that we pursue together, the love that we show one another, is real. And I never want you to think that you are smaller than you are, because the love that you show one another and that you show me daily, the grace that you profess, the grace that you dare to recognize, changes not only your lives, our lives, but it truly changes the world. The love that you show one another, the grace in which you trust, matters not only for this room, this place, or even for the homes that we will go on to later today. It matters for our diocese. Several of us were just at the convention of our diocese these past couple of days, hearing stories from all over the church in Southeast Michigan. And I'll tell you, the love that you show one another, the love that you show everyone who walks through these doors, matters. And it needs to be told more and more. The love that you show one another changes the world. The love that you show one another is the beacon of hope. It is the beacon of hope in the heart of Detroit. Whenever we pursue the heart of God, whenever we pursue that grace in which we are rooted, we are a beacon of hope here in Detroit, here in our diocese. Who knows how far that story will spread? The story of God's love and the root of grace in which we live. If you don't believe me, it's okay if you don't. Just look around at one another. Look at how you sit down to pray with one another over breakfast. Look at how you welcome and acknowledge and seek to comfort and strengthen everyone who walks through these doors, expected or unexpected, convenient or inconvenient. Look at how when somebody comes to the door, as our senior warden Christine was just telling me, there are people outside yesterday looking for a tour of the church. And she said, "Come on in, I'll show you around." I'm sure she had other things to do at that moment. But she knew how important it was for our love, your love, to be shared and told. And she showed me a picture of how astonished our visitors were at the love that has built this place. If you don't believe me, of course, venture through Ministry Fair, which is simply, in my mind, an expression of the love that has built and continues to build this place on full, resplendent display. It is grace in which we live, and you teach me that every day. Thank you.